Commander Lisa Torres stood in the control room of Luna Station, watching the strange signals on her screen. The year was 2387, and humanity had been alone in space for so long that most people forgot to look for aliens anymore. But today was different. Today the screen showed something that should not exist. "Ma'am, we have confirmed alien contact," said Lieutenant Amy Richards from her station. Her voice was calm, but Lisa could hear the excitement underneath. "They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies and their ship is massive." Lisa nodded and activated the emergency protocols. Within minutes, Captain Jake Morrison was preparing his ship New Horizon for humanity's first meeting with aliens. The Earth Defense Force had practiced this moment for decades, but nobody really believed it would happen. The alien ship appeared on the main screen, and Lisa felt her breath catch. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The vessel stretched for miles and glowed with strange blue lights. Smaller ships moved around it like insects around a giant flower. "Incoming transmission," reported Amy. The screen flickered and suddenly they were looking at something that was definitely not human. The creature had 4 arms and skin that looked like metal. Its eyes were large and completely black. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Galactic Council," the alien said. Its voice was translated by their computers but still sounded strange. "We come to welcome your species to the galactic community." Lisa activated her communicator. "This is Commander Torres of Earth Defense. We are honored by your visit." The alien's expression did not change. "Honor is earned through strength. We will evaluate your species and determine your proper place in our civilization." Something about the way Zethkar spoke made Lisa uncomfortable. She had studied alien contact procedures her entire career, and this did not feel like a friendly meeting. The alien sounded more like a boss talking to a new employee. Captain Morrison's voice came through the comm system. "Commander, I'm reading massive energy signatures from their fleet. They have at least 50 ships out there and weapons that could level cities." Lisa kept her face calm, but her mind was racing. Earth's leaders had always wondered what would happen when aliens finally arrived. Would they be friendly explorers or dangerous conquerors? Now she was starting to understand which one they were dealing with. "Ambassador Zethkar," Lisa said carefully. "Perhaps we should arrange a formal meeting to discuss this properly." The alien tilted its head. "There is nothing to discuss. Your species will submit to council authority or face the consequences. We have brought this offer to over 800 worlds. Most choose wisdom." Lisa felt ice in her stomach. This was not first contact. This was an invasion demand wrapped in polite words. She looked at Amy, who was already sending coded messages to Earth Command. "We would like some time to consider your generous offer," Lisa said. Zethkar made a sound that might have been laughter. "You have 1 rotation of your planet. We will demonstrate our power so you understand the choice you face." The transmission ended and Lisa immediately contacted General Peter Hayes on Earth. Within minutes, the emergency council was meeting and plans were being put into motion. Plans that had been secret for over a century. "Deploy the satellites," ordered General Hayes. "It's time they learned what they're really dealing with." 3 hours later, the alien fleet moved into position near Mars. Lisa watched from Luna Station as they prepared their demonstration. A massive asteroid was selected as their target. The alien flagship charged its main weapon and fired. The asteroid simply disappeared in a flash of light. The aliens had vaporized something the size of a small mountain in seconds. It was meant to terrify humanity into surrender. Instead, Colonel Martha Stevens activated Defense Satellite 7. The satellite was tiny compared to the alien ships. Most people would have missed it completely. But when its antimatter beam fired, the alien flagship's shield simply vanished. The beam cut through their protection like it wasn't even there. Lisa smiled as she watched the alien fleet suddenly stop moving. She could imagine the panic on their ships as they realized their shields were useless. "Message from the alien fleet," reported Amy. Zethkar appeared on the screen again, but now he looked worried. "What was that weapon?" "That was a demonstration," Lisa replied. "You wanted to show us your power. We thought we should show you ours." The alien's 4 arms moved nervously. "Impossible. No species has weapons that can penetrate council shields." "Lisa, looked directly into those black eyes. "You've never met humans before." The truth was that Earth had been preparing for this moment since detecting alien signals decades earlier. Hidden shipyards had been building weapons designed specifically to counter galactic technology. Quantum sensors had been tracking Council movements for years. Dr. Kevin Brooks had spent his career studying alien biology from intercepted transmissions. His research showed that the Council species relied completely on energy shields. Their entire military doctrine was based on weapons that humans had already learned to defeat. Captain Susan Miller was already preparing her new battlecruiser Terra's Wrath in the Jupiter shipyards. Her crew had trained for years using simulated alien tactics. Lieutenant Daniel Foster knew exactly which weapons to use against energy shields. Commander Betty Walsh had designed defensive systems that could make human ships nearly invisible. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had just discovered space travel. They had no idea that humanity had been studying them and preparing defenses for decades. As the alien fleet withdrew to a safer distance, Lisa contacted President Helen Carter in Washington. The president's message to the aliens was simple and direct: "You are not welcome here, leave now." The aliens would interpret this as desperate bravado from a defeated species. They could not imagine that humans had weapons and ships that made their entire armada look like ancient toys. Lisa watched the alien fleet regroup and knew they would be back soon with everything they had. The Council had conquered 800 worlds using fear and overwhelming force. They expected Earth to surrender just like all the others. They were about to learn that humans were nothing like the other species they had conquered. Earth had been ready for this day for a very long time, and the aliens were about to face the most advanced military force in galactic history. 3 weeks after the failed demonstration, Fleet Admiral Corthus stood before the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime. The massive chamber held representatives from dozens of species, all united under Council rule. Today they would discuss the human problem. "The humans possess weapons that can penetrate our shields," Corthus reported. His voice echoed in the Great Hall. "I recommend we approach them with caution and study their technology before taking action." Supreme Chancellor Mordak raised one of his 6 arms dismissively. "Impossible. No primitive species could develop such weapons. Your sensors must be malfunctioning." War Chief Vexmore stood up from his position. He was larger than most Council members, and his species had conquered more worlds than any other. "I have reviewed the data. The humans use some kind of particle beam. Our ships can be modified to defend against such crude weapons." Corthus felt frustration building inside him. He had been fighting for the Council for over 200 years and knew danger when he saw it. The human weapon had not been crude at all. It had been precisely designed to defeat their specific type of shielding. With respect, War Chief, the beam was far too advanced to be called crude. The humans knew exactly how to bypass our defenses. Mordak made the sound his species used for laughter. "You give these creatures too much credit. They have been in space for less than 500 years. We have ruled the galaxy for thousands." Back in the Sol system, Admiral Rachel Cooper was overseeing the final preparations for Earth's defense. Hidden shipyards throughout the asteroid belt were working at full capacity. Ships that had taken decades to design were finally being completed. The Team Saturn facility alone was producing battlecruisers with quantum armor that could phase in and out of normal space. Jupiter Base was finishing the gravitational wave cannons that could crush matter at the atomic level. Even tiny Pluto had become a weapons factory building devices that the Council could not even detect. Dr. Kevin Brooks reviewed his latest analysis of Council biology. Every species in their empire had evolved on high-gravity worlds, which made them physically strong but mentally rigid. They could not adapt quickly to new situations or technologies they had never seen before. Their entire civilization is based on doing the same thing over and over, Brooks explained to his research team. They find a world, use the same tactics to conquer it, then move on to the next target. They've never had to change their methods because nothing has ever worked against them before. Captain Susan Miller walked through her new ship Terra's Wrath and marveled at what human engineers had accomplished. The vessel was smaller than Council ships, but every system had been designed to counter their specific weaknesses. Lieutenant Daniel Foster was testing weapons that could fire projectiles at nearly light speed. Commander Betty Walsh monitored defensive systems that could bend space around the ship. Meanwhile, on Nexus Prime, the Council continued their planning. Spy Master Quintel reported on his attempts to infiltrate Earth's defenses. Our stealth ships cannot approach their planet. Undetected, they seem to have sensors that can see through our cloaking technology. Then we use overwhelming force, declared Vexmore. I will assemble an armada of 200 ships. No world has ever resisted such a fleet. Lieutenant Chris Andrews at Deep Space Monitoring Station smiled as he watched another Council probe get detected and cataloged by Earth's quantum sensor network. The aliens were using stealth technology that was centuries out of date compared to human detection methods. The Council had no idea that human scientists had solved most of the basic problems of space warfare decades ago. Energy weapons were useless against quantum phase barriers. Missiles could not hit targets that could manipulate time. Traditional shields meant nothing to weapons that attacked matter at the subatomic level. President Helen Carter met with her military advisors in the secure bunker beneath Washington. The alien ultimatum had given them exactly what they needed to justify activating Operation Starfire. Every human in the solar system would soon know that Earth was about to be attacked by hostile aliens. "How long do we have?" asked the president. General Hayes consulted his tablet. "Intelligence suggests they're assembling a fleet at their staging area near Alpha Centauri. We estimate they'll arrive within 2 weeks." Carter nodded. "That gives us enough time to evacuate the civilian stations and prepare our final positions." The evacuation was the hardest part. Millions of humans lived and worked throughout the solar system. Space stations, mining facilities, and research outposts all had to be cleared before the fighting started. But humanity had been planning for this possibility, and the evacuation proceeded smoothly. As the last civilian transport left the danger zone, Admiral Frank Thompson took command of the solar defense grid. Hidden weapon platforms throughout the system powered up for the first time. Devices that had been disguised as asteroids or space debris revealed their true nature. The Council fleet approached the Sol system with complete confidence. Vexmore commanded from his flagship while his subordinates prepared for what they expected to be an easy victory. 200 ships carrying the combined military might of 12 species was more than enough to crush one primitive world. They had used this exact same strategy hundreds of times before. Surround the planet, demand surrender, and begin systematic bombardment when the inhabitants refused. Most species gave up after seeing the size of their fleet. The few that resisted were quickly overwhelmed by superior numbers and technology. As they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, Vexmore ordered his ships into standard attack formation. Intelligence reported that the humans had scattered defense platforms throughout their system, but nothing that could threaten a Council fleet. The war chief activated his communication system and broadcast the traditional surrender demand to Earth. "Humans of the third planet, you are surrounded and outgunned. Submit to Council authority and your deaths will be quick." President Carter's response was broadcast throughout the system. "We reject your authority. You have 10 minutes to leave our space or we will defend ourselves." Vexmore laughed. In all his years of conquest, no primitive species had ever threatened him. The humans were about to learn the same lesson as 800 other worlds. He had no idea that Earth's defense network was already targeting every ship in his fleet. Human weapons that had been tested and refined for decades were powering up. The most advanced military force in galactic history was about to show the Council what real warfare looked like. War Chief Vexmore gave the order to attack, and 200 Council ships opened fire on the human defense platforms. Energy beams that could melt mountains struck the small stations scattered throughout the Sol system. For a moment, it looked like the humans would be destroyed in seconds. Then the beams simply passed through the stations without causing any damage at all. Admiral Frank Thompson smiled from his command center on Luna Base. "Activate Operation Starfire. Show them what we've been building." Saturn's ring suddenly blazed with light as massive weapon platforms emerged from where they had been hidden for decades. These were not the crude kinetic weapons the Council expected, but gravitational implosion devices that could collapse matter at the subatomic level. Captain Maria Santos commanded the outer system defense grid from Titan Base. Her screens showed every council ship in perfect detail as quantum sensors tracked their exact positions. All stations report ready for combat. Enemy shields are useless against our weapons. The first human attack began with a demonstration that shocked the alien fleet. One of Saturn's platforms fired a gravitational pulse at an empty section of space near the council formation. Reality seemed to twist and bend as the weapon created a temporary black hole that pulled in asteroids and debris. Vexmore watched in horror as the demonstration showed him what human weapons could do. Impossible. No species has mastered gravitational manipulation. His science officer checked the readings 3 times before reporting. War Chief, the humans appear to have weapons that can manipulate space-time itself. Our shields cannot protect against gravitational attacks. Before Vexmore could respond, Jupiter began to move. The giant planet had been hiding humanity's most secret project. Hidden construction had turned the gas giant into a mobile weapons platform, larger than anything the Council had ever seen. Colonel Steve Parker oversaw the deployment of Earth's nano-disassembly swarms from Jupiter base. Billions of microscopic machines launched toward the Council fleet. Each one was programmed to seek out alien technology and reduce it to component atoms. First wave deployed, reported Parker. Enemy vessels will begin experiencing system failures within minutes. Commander Alex Johnson led the first human fighter squadron as they launched from hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt. His ships looked tiny compared to the massive Council vessels, but each fighter carried more firepower than most alien battleships. "Remember your training," Johnson told his pilots over the comm system. "Their weapons can't hurt us and their shields can't stop us. Linda Davis, take your wing and hit their command ship. Carl Rogers, focus on their heavy cruisers. Nicole Bennett, coordinate with the defense platforms." The Council fleet tried to respond with their traditional tactics, but nothing worked the way it was supposed to. Their energy weapons passed harmlessly through human ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Their targeting systems could not lock onto vessels that flickered in and out of normal space. Dr. Patricia Lewis activated the Psychological Warfare Division from her base on Ceres. Advanced telepathic dampeners began broadcasting directly into the minds of enemy crews. Panic spread through the Council ships as alien soldiers experienced terror beyond anything their species had ever known. The carefully disciplined alien formation began to break apart as individual ships fled in random directions. Captains who had conquered dozens of worlds suddenly found themselves facing weapons and tactics that made no sense at all. Admiral Roy Mitchell revealed one of humanity's greatest secrets when he activated the faster-than-light communication network. For over a century, humans had possessed FTL travel, but had chosen to remain hidden while they developed weapons specifically designed to counter every known form of galactic technology. Agent Sarah Kim coordinated the intelligence network that had been monitoring Council activities for decades. Human spies had infiltrated alien society and studied their weaknesses. Every weapon, every tactic, every psychological pressure point had been cataloged and prepared for. "Sir, we have confirmed intelligence on all major Council species," Kim reported to Admiral Mitchell. "Deploying countermeasures now." The nanoswarms reached the first Council ships and began their work. Alien crews watched in horror as their own vessels started to dissolve around them. Hull plating became dust. Control systems simply vanished. Weapons that had conquered hundreds of worlds crumbled into nothing. Captain Ellen Hughes activated the Sol system's ultimate defense from her position on Pluto base. A network of artificial black holes that had taken 50 years to create suddenly became visible throughout the system. Each one could be precisely controlled and weaponized. "Black hole network is active," Hughes reported. "We can now control gravity itself within a radius of 50 billion miles." Vexmore tried desperately to rally his forces, but the battle was already over. Half his fleet had been destroyed or disabled by weapons he could not even understand. The other half was retreating in complete disorder. "All ships withdraw immediately," he ordered. "We cannot fight enemies who control the fundamental forces of the universe." But even retreat was not simple. Major Tony Clark commanded human pursuit ships that used temporal displacement to arrive at the enemy's destination before they did. Captain Ruth Adams led squadrons equipped with capture technology that could disable fleeing vessels without destroying them. "Do not let them escape with information about our capabilities," ordered Admiral Thompson. "We need prisoners for intelligence gathering." The human pursuit craft moved through space in ways that violated every law of physics the Council understood. They seemed to teleport from one location to another. They fired weapons that traveled backwards through time. They used defensive systems that made them completely immune to all forms of attack. Within 2 hours, the mighty Council fleet had been reduced to a handful of badly damaged ships limping away from the Sol system. Vexmore's flagship was barely functional, and most of his crew was dead or unconscious from the psychological warfare. The war chief, who had conquered more worlds than any other Council leader in history, was now fleeing from primitives who had turned space itself into a weapon. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had been proven wrong in the most devastating defeat in galactic history. As the last alien ships disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Thompson surveyed the battlefield. Scattered debris was all that remained of the most powerful fleet the Council had ever assembled. Human casualties were exactly 0. "Send a message to Earth Command," Thompson ordered. "Phase 1 complete. The Council now knows they cannot defeat us through military force." The real war was just beginning, but humanity had already won the most important battle. They had proven that Earth was not another primitive world waiting to be conquered. They were the most advanced military power in the galaxy, and they were ready to use that power to protect not just themselves, but every species that desired freedom from Council tyranny. The surviving Council ships limped back to Nexus Prime, carrying news that would shake the galactic government to its core. War Chief Vexmore stood before the Supreme Council with his uniform torn and his pride destroyed. The most powerful military force in the galaxy had been crushed by creatures they had dismissed as primitives. "Impossible," declared Supreme Chancellor Mordak when he heard the report. "No species could possess such advanced weapons. You must have encountered some unknown alien force using human space." Vexmore's damaged voice recorder played back the sounds of the battle. Council members listened in growing horror as they heard their most advanced ships being destroyed by weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. Strategic Advisor Lixvan studied the battle data with growing fear. "The humans did not just defeat us. They completely outclassed every aspect of our technology. Their weapons, their defenses, their tactics are all centuries ahead of anything we possess." Defense Minister Kaltresh refused to accept the truth. "We still have over 1,000 ships, scattered throughout our territory. Surely we can assemble a force large enough to overwhelm these humans." Before anyone could respond, alarms began sounding throughout Nexus Prime. A single human ship had appeared in the heart of Council space without triggering any of their detection systems. Admiral Gary Williams commanded the Earth vessel, Voice of Peace, as it materialized in orbit around the Council capital world. His ship was smaller than most Council fighters, but its mere presence sent panic through the alien government. "How did they get here?" demanded Mordak. "Our defenses should have detected any approaching vessel." The answer came when Captain Nancy Green activated the ship's communication system. Secretary of State William Price appeared on every screen in the Council chambers. He looked calm and professional as he delivered humanity's message to the galactic government. "Members of the Council," Price began, "I am here to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence between our species. You attacked our home without provocation and discovered that we are capable of defending ourselves. Now we need to talk about what happens next." Supreme Chancellor Mordak tried to maintain his authority, despite the fear in his voice. "You dare come here after destroying our fleet. We demand compensation for your unprovoked attacks." Price smiled sadly. "Your own records will show that you attacked us first. We defended ourselves using minimal force necessary to protect our people. Most of your crews were captured alive and will be returned to you unharmed." Director Paul Martinez had spent decades building Earth's intelligence network throughout Council space. His agents now revealed the true extent of human knowledge about galactic society. Every corrupt deal, every secret alliance, every hidden genocide was documented and ready to be exposed. "We know about the slave markets on Kepler 7, Price continued. "We know about the forced labor camps on the mining worlds. We know about the species you've driven to extinction because they refused to submit to your authority. The Council..." chamber erupted in chaos as representatives realized that humanity possessed detailed information about their darkest secrets. Species that had been forced to participate in council crimes began to panic as they faced exposure. Commander Jennifer Lee coordinated the humanitarian fleet that had followed Admiral Williams into council space. Her ships carried medical supplies, food, and technology that could revolutionize life on the oppressed worlds throughout the Galactic Empire. "We're offering aid to any world that wants independence from council rule," Lee announced to the rebellious species. "Earth will provide protection and assistance to anyone seeking freedom." The political earthquake that followed tore the council apart from within. Species that had been conquered centuries earlier suddenly saw hope for liberation. Rebel movements that had been suppressed for generations began to rise up against their oppressors. General Marcus Brown demonstrated human defensive capabilities by walking into the council chambers wearing only a simple uniform. When security forces tried to stop him, their energy weapons simply bounced off his personal shield generator. He moved through their defenses like they were made of paper. "Your weapons cannot hurt us," Brown explained to the terrified council members. "But we have no desire to conquer you. We want to offer you a chance to join the community of free worlds that we're building." Dr. Angela White led the scientific exchange that began sharing human technology with species willing to abandon the council system. Her revelations about quantum computing, genetic therapy, and energy manipulation showed aliens that cooperation was more powerful than conquest. "We've learned that knowledge shared freely grows faster than knowledge hoarded by the powerful," White explained to amazed alien scientists. "Every species has something unique to contribute to galactic civilization." The old order continued to crumble as Captain Sean Davis made contact with rebel factions throughout council territory. These groups had been fighting hopeless battles against superior technology for centuries. Now they had allies with weapons that made council forces look like ancient relics. Within months, entire sectors of council space declared independence. Admiral Laura Johnson's humanitarian fleet spread throughout the former empire, offering aid and protection to newly free worlds. Her ships could defeat any council force sent against them, while providing the support that developing civilizations needed. The transformation was not without violence. Council hardliners refused to accept the loss of their empire and tried to use terror tactics against rebellious worlds. But human forces were everywhere, providing protection and demonstrating that the age of galactic tyranny was ending. President Margaret Scott announced the formation of the Free Worlds Alliance from New Geneva Station, humanity's gift to the emerging Confederation. The massive space station had been built from recycled council warships using molecular assembly technology that turned weapons of war into tools of peace. "We're not here to replace one empire with another," Scott declared to the First Galactic Assembly. "We're here to ensure that no species ever again has to choose between slavery and destruction." The Council's response was predictable. They tried to rally their remaining loyal species for one final war against the human-led alliance. But their military advantages had been built on superior technology and intimidation. Both were now useless against enemies who possessed weapons they could not even understand. Former Council worlds discovered that humanity's greatest strength was not their advanced technology, but their willingness to share it freely with anyone, committed to peace and freedom. Species that had been enslaved for centuries suddenly found themselves with the tools needed to build their own advanced civilizations. The war that followed was short and decisive. Human forces did not conquer Council territory, but instead provided support for the rebellions that erupted on every remaining Council world. Within a year, the Galactic Empire that had ruled for thousands of years had completely collapsed. Its place arose something unprecedented in galactic history, a confederation of free worlds united not by force but by shared values of liberty, cooperation, and mutual respect. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, but had instead shown every species what freedom could accomplish. The old council chambers on Nexus Prime were converted into a museum dedicated to the victims of galactic tyranny. The new government met on rotating worlds chosen by democratic vote. No single species dominated the alliance because humanity had proven that true strength came from cooperation rather than conquest. 2 years after the council's defeat, President Margaret Scott stood before the largest gathering of intelligent species in galactic history. The first Galactic Assembly was meeting aboard New Geneva Station, high above the former Council capital world. Representatives from over 300 free worlds had come to sign the charter that would create a new kind of civilization. "We gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals," Scott declared to the assembled delegates. "The age of galactic empires built on fear and oppression has ended. Today begins the era of cooperation and mutual respect." The station itself was a symbol of humanity's approach to galactic leadership. Built entirely from recycled Council warships, the massive structure demonstrated that weapons of war could be transformed into tools of peace. Dr. Richard Jackson had led the project using molecular assembly technology to turn destroying machines into a place where different species could meet and work together. Former Council species discovered that humanity's secret weapons were actually applications of scientific principles that any civilization could develop given time and peaceful cooperation. The humans had not possessed some magical advantage, but had simply spent centuries focusing on research and development instead of conquest and oppression. Captain Julia Morris commanded the Joint Defense Fleet that protected newly independent worlds from the few remaining Council hardliners. Her crew included representatives from dozens of species, all trained in human tactical methods that emphasized protection over conquest. The mixed crews were remarkable to observe. Humans worked alongside former Council soldiers and rebels who had fought each other for generations. Lieutenant Sam Davis from Earth coordinated with Flight Commander Zexalan, whose people had been slaves for 3 centuries. They operated advanced human technology while learning from each other's unique perspectives and experiences. The transformation was not without challenges. Admiral Carol Thompson dealt with Council remnants who refused to accept the new order and continued launching terrorist attacks against free worlds. Major Timothy Lee coordinated relief efforts on planets where sudden independence had created temporary chaos, as former subjects learned to govern themselves. "Freedom is harder than slavery," Thompson explained to her staff during a briefing about the latest crisis. "Slaves only need to obey orders. Free people need to make their own decisions, and that takes time to learn." Some worlds struggled with the transition from centralized control to democratic self-governance. Human advisors like Ambassador Catherine Baker worked patiently with new governments, helping them develop systems that worked for their specific cultures and needs. Earth's role in the galaxy evolved from protector to teacher. Secretary of Defense Donald Clark oversaw the gradual reduction of human military presence as other species developed their own defensive capabilities using shared human technology. "Our goal was never to become galactic police," Clark told a meeting of Alliance defense ministers. "Our goal was to give everyone the tools they need to protect themselves and their freedom." The sharing of technology accelerated as trust grew between species. Human scientists worked with alien researchers to solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Dr. Lisa Chen led a joint project that developed new terraforming techniques, allowing barren worlds to bloom with life. Captain Benjamin Scott commanded the new exploration fleet that ventured beyond the former Council borders, seeking other civilizations that might benefit from contact with the Alliance. His ships carried diplomats, scientists, and teachers rather than soldiers. "We learned the hard way that first contact shapes everything that comes after," Scott explained to his crew before their first mission beyond known space. "We're going to do this right." The exploration missions discovered that the Council had not been the only galactic empire. Other regions of space were controlled by different, tyrannical governments that used similar methods of conquest and oppression, but news of the Council's defeat and the human example was already spreading. Rebellions began erupting in distant star systems as oppressed species learned that resistance was possible. The Alliance provided support where requested, but always at the invitation of local populations fighting for their own freedom. Admiral Sandra Ross oversaw the construction of the Harmony Memorial on the site where the first battle had been fought near Mars. The monument honored not just human defenders but all beings throughout history who had chosen to fight for freedom rather than submit to tyranny. "We remember, not because we won, but because the victory belongs to everyone who refused to give up hope," Ross said At the dedication ceremony, representatives from hundreds of worlds attended, placing memorial stones from their home planets in the growing garden of remembrance. The new galactic civilization faced its first major test when long-range sensors detected an approaching fleet from beyond the galactic rim. The unknown ships were massive and clearly built for war. Fear spread through the Alliance as worlds wondered if they would face another Council-style invasion. But humanity had learned important lessons about the power of cooperation. Instead of preparing for war alone, the Alliance species worked together to develop defensive strategies and diplomatic approaches. When the strangers arrived, they found not a divided galaxy ripe for conquest, but a united confederation ready to defend itself and welcome peaceful contact. The approaching fleet turned out to be refugees fleeing their own tyrannical empire. Their technology was different from Council designs, but their story was depressingly familiar. A powerful species had conquered their region of space and was expanding outward, seeking new worlds to dominate. "We offer you sanctuary and support," President Scott told the refugee fleet commanders. "And if you choose, we offer you the chance to join us in ensuring that what happened to you never happens to anyone else." The refugees brought new knowledge and perspectives that enriched Alliance, technology and culture. Their own military experience combined with human innovations created defensive systems even more advanced than what had defeated the Council. As Scott's second term as Alliance president came to an end, she reflected on how much had changed since that first alien ultimatum years earlier. The galaxy was not perfect, but it was free. Hundreds of species that had once lived in fear now controlled their own destinies. The final scene of humanity's transformation from isolated species to galactic guardians took place at the annual Alliance Assembly. This year's meeting was hosted by a world that had been liberated from Council slavery only 3 years earlier. Captain Ellen Davis represented Earth at the ceremony as the Alliance elected its new leadership. For the first time in Alliance history, no human was chosen for the top position. Instead, a coalition of former Council subjects took control of the Confederation they had helped to create. "This is what we worked for," Davis told her human colleagues as they watched the peaceful transfer of power. Not to rule the galaxy, but to make sure it could rule itself. Humanity had discovered its true place among the stars. They were not conquerors or rulers, but protectors and teachers. Their greatest weapon had never been their advanced technology, but their commitment to the idea that all intelligent life deserved freedom and dignity. The galaxy would face new challenges in the years ahead. There would be other empires to confront, other tyrants to defeat, and other species to liberate. But the example had been set and the principles established. No matter what came next, the galaxy would face it as free beings working together, rather than as slaves serving masters. Earth's children had grown up and taught their neighbors to stand tall. The age of galactic tyranny was ending, and the era of universal freedom had begun.